flame was lit more than 150 years ago in a handful of rural towns and villages in Northeast America. Soon, that flame was spreading around the world. But it only happened because dedicated Seventh-day Adventists looked beyond their own needs to a world in need. Because of Seventh-day Adventists who said, "I will go. I will go beyond my home, beyond my country, beyond my language, beyond my own people, to light the flame among those who have never heard." Many of those faithful missionaries gave their lives for the salvation of others. They never came home. The Seventh-day Adventist Church was founded on sacrifice. It grew through sacrifice, and it will only continue to grow through sacrifice. The selfless sacrifice of those who still believe that this gospel of the kingdom must be preached in all the world as a witness to all nations. 33 years ago, the General Conference Annual Council voted a document entitled Global Strategy of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. That document explored the mission challenge still facing the church. It opened with these words: "The figures are stark, unrelenting. World population 5.3 billion. Seventh-day Adventist world membership more than 6 million. The document outlined a strategy to refocus the church's mission, to refocus on unreached territories and unreached people groups, to refocus people and funds to reach the unreached with hope, and plant new groups of believers on new mission frontiers." That refocus was voted the following year at the General Conference session in Indianapolis. The refocus was called Global Mission.
I don't think we have ever sat down to discuss a subject of greater importance than global mission. And global mission requires a strategy in order to carry the message of God's love, the saving grace of Christ and his soon coming to every nation, kindred, tongue, and people. A global mission and a global strategy which extends from continent to continent, country to country, city to city, group to group, and ultimately person to person.
Today, as we look at our mission challenge more than 30 years later, the figures are still stark, unrelenting. We rejoice to see new groups of believers planted in the 1040 window, in the city, among other religious groups, among the secular and post-Christian. But the time has come for another mission refocus. A time for aligning our hearts and minds, our people, our resources, our budgets, to reach the unreached with hope.
So the video referenced the time in the 1980s when church leaders came together and they got out the world map and they saw that there were some parts of the world where the Adventist church was strong and other parts of the world where we were non-existent or very weak. And even today, I can take you to certain parts of the world where we are still very strong and other places where they've never even heard the name of Adventist. I can think, for example, of Papua New Guinea, and some years ago I was there in Port Moresby in the capital, and I started talking with one of the local people, and he had nicotine stains on his fingers and betel nut stains on his teeth, and I could smell alcohol on his breath. But we were talking together, and he discovered I was a Seventh-day Adventist. A huge smile came across his face, and he said, "You're a Seventh-day Adventist." Gave me a big bear hug, squeezed the life out of me, and he said, "I am a Seventh-day Adventist backslider." In Papua New Guinea, even to be connected with the Adventist church is a positive thing. But of course, in other parts of the world, we still have a lot of work to do. Well, if we can look at the PowerPoint now, please. Back in the 1980s, the church leaders came together and formed Global Mission Strategy, which gave birth in 1990 to Global Mission, which is the initiative to start new groups of believers. Now, there were two important things that started with Global Mission. One, we started to think more in terms of people groups rather than geography. We used to think in terms of, well, is this country entered? Is this territory entered? Now we started thinking about people groups, because I could take you to Burma, for example, Myanmar. We've had an Adventist church there for more than 100 years. We have schools, we have churches, we have different activities happening. But 95% of the Adventist church members come from minority hill tribes people, the Karen, the Chin, and the majority Burmese Buddhist population we've scarcely influenced at all. So geographically it has been entered, but in terms of people groups, we have more work to do. The other consideration was that when we look at the history of the Adventist church, most Adventists have come from either animist groups or other Christian denominations. Global Mission started us thinking more about how do we reach people in the great world religions. And the people who are doing this on the front lines of Global Mission are our Global Mission pioneers, and I'll talk a little bit more about them in a few minutes. To help us more effectively reach out to people from totally different cultural and religious backgrounds to us, Global Mission set up Global Mission Centers. We have 6 of them. We have a Center for Adventist Jewish Relations, Center for Adventist Muslim Relations, Center for South Asian Religions, a Center for Adventist Buddhist Relations, a Center for Urban Mission, and a Center for Secular and Post-Christian Mission. Their task is to research, to learn, to try out new methods, new models for us to better understand and connect with people from totally different traditions to us. Well, it's now been more than 30 years since Global Mission began. And Dr. Mike Ryan, who's here today, was there at the very beginnings because he was the first director. But, you know, in any organization, there's always going to be some mission drift. And perhaps it is time for us now to have a refocus, a mission refocus about where are we putting our mission priorities. And so we are highlighting 3 mission windows that we feel need to be our central focus with mission. The 1040 window, the post-Christian window, and the urban window. When we look at the growth of the Adventist church, since Global Mission began, we thank God that the number of churches has more than tripled around the world. We see the membership has also grown from 6.7 million to more than 22 million. We're a very different church today than we were 100 years ago or 32 years ago. Here you can see if the Adventist church were a village of 100 people, you can see that most of the village is coming from a few territories that are not the North American division. Here you can see Adventist church members 100 years ago, and you can see that Europe and North America dominated the Adventist landscape. Today, you can see it's very different, where North America and Europe make up only 8% of the global Adventist population. 235 countries are recognized by the United Nations, and in those we have 212 countries where we have established Adventist work. So let's look a little bit more closely at these 3 mission focus windows. First of all, the 1040 window. This is an imaginary rectangle that stretches from Northwest Africa through the Middle East into Asia, where the majority of the world's population live. And this is a population that is some of the most needy in the world. And it's a population, of course, where the majority of people have never even heard the name of Jesus Christ. Here's another way of looking at this window, and this is a circle. Much of it is ocean. It also has within that circle Mongolia, and much of that is desert. But more people live in that circle than live outside of that circle. That's how densely populated it is. And you can see this small red dot, and then you can see the blue coverage. the population of that red dot is equal to the entire blue coverage on the map. That's the population density there in the 1040 window. Take, for example, Uttar Pradesh, one state in India, and we know it because it's the home of the Taj Mahal. This one state, if it were a country, it would be the 5th most populous country in the world. We have 6 Adventist churches in that state, which means we have one church for every 10 million people. Right next to Uttar Pradesh is Bihar. Bihar, we have 4 Seventh-day Adventist churches. That means we have one church for every 32 million people. I played around with this statistic a little bit, and in the Philippines we have more than 5,000 churches. If we had the same ratio of population to churches in the Philippines as we do in Bihar, we would have 3 churches. If we had the same ratio in Kenya, instead of 7,000 churches, we'd have 2. In North America, we have more than 5,000. If we had the same ratio, we would have 12. Brazil, we have 10,000 churches. We would have fewer than 7. Where I come from in Australia, we have 440 churches. We'd have less than 1. Papua New Guinea, we have 1,100. We'd have less than a half. Gives you some sort of a glimpse into the scope of the 1040 window challenge. Think of Java, just that small island in Indonesia, 145 million people. Here you can see countries that have a smaller population than that one island in the 1040 window. Our second mission window is the post-Christian window. We have about 1.1 billion people who identify as post-Christian or secular. It's a growing number. We've seen it in Western Europe, we've seen it in Australia and New Zealand. Now we're seeing it increasingly here in North America. Perhaps we could call it the world's 3rd largest religious group. The third mission challenge window is the urban window. And this is a big challenge for Seventh-day Adventists because historically we have been allergic to urban areas. We are people who love the country. That's where we have tended to locate our ministries and our churches. But now it is our new mission field. And Ellen White talked about centers of influence that we need to have in cities. Well, cities themselves are centers of influence. They're the home of politics, entertainment, economics, media, education, fashion. And if we are going to have any input with our mission, we need to have input and influence in the cities. We have 543 cities around the world with more than 1 million people. These cities average 1 Adventist per 89,000 people. Globally, it's 1 Adventist for every 358 people, but you can see the challenge in the cities. So when you look at everything that Global Mission does, our Global Mission centers, our tent makers, our Global Mission pioneers, our urban centers of influence, everything we do is focused on one thing: starting new groups of believers. Matthew 24 gives us a promise. We need to remind ourselves that this is not our mission, it's God's mission, because if we were a business and we looked at those statistics, we would pack up and go home. But it's God's mission. He has a plan. He has merely invited us to be part of His plan. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached. Not maybe not perhaps, but it will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. Caleb, last year you went to Alaska. Please introduce the next story for us.
Part of what we do with Adventist Mission is we like to tell the stories of mission all over the world. Have any of you heard of Mission Spotlight videos? Excellent. So we get to produce those, and I get to go and film some of these projects, which is I love to do because you get to meet so many interesting people who are so dedicated and in interesting parts of the world. So we're going to share a couple videos tonight. The first one is from Alaska. And one of the things we like to feature in these videos are the challenges. Because like Gary mentioned, there's so many challenges everywhere around the world to mission, but with those challenges come unique methods of ministry to combat those challenges. And I think this story is a good example. In Alaska, I'm sure many of you are familiar, they have the road network, which covers Anchorage, Palmer, and some of the other areas. But outside of that, the huge state of Alaska, most of the places are these rural villages that you have to fly to, or take a dog sled to, or these other areas that are incredibly challenging to get to. Well, what they've done in Alaska is they have the Arctic Mission Adventure, which has been tasked with reaching these places and creating or getting volunteers or lived-in missionaries to go live in these villages to minister to those communities. So this story that we're going to share is one example of what they've done, but this was one of my favorite videos that I've ever filmed, because when we went to all the way up to Barrow, Alaska, Utqiagvik in the far north. It's the most northern village in all of North America, or in all of the United States. And we went in February, right next to the Arctic Ocean. Gary, do you remember how cold it was? It was negative 40 degrees. And something that I didn't know until then was negative 40 degrees is where Fahrenheit and Celsius meet. So when you try to translate that, you don't have to. You say it's negative 40 and everybody understands. But it was an interesting project. We went out to a few different areas, and the one that the video is about is Savunga, Alaska, which is a little village on St. Lawrence Island, which is in between the mainland of Alaska and Siberia, Russia. So on a clear day from the St. Lawrence Island where we filmed this story, you can see the mountains of Siberia in Russia. It's that close. And you can only fly in. Another place they brought us to film these stories was they had an ice highway during the winter months for 3 months. This river freezes thick enough to where they put road signs and everything just to get through the different villages. So this was one of the more adventurous stories that we told. But it's a great example of the challenges of mission in many areas around the world, but the decisiveness and the passion that people have to find ways around that. So I hope you guys enjoy this first video.
Alaska is a vast, wild territory in the United States. Much of the state is nearly inaccessible because of harsh landscapes and lack of roads. This creates a big mission challenge. The Seventh-day Adventist Church in Alaska came up with a solution named Arctic Mission Adventure.
Arctic Mission Adventure is the mission of the Alaska Conference to deal with bush or remote Alaska. When you think about the incredible territory Alaska is, Arctic Mission covers all the remote stuff, off the road system and off the southeast water system. We try to provide programming and support for them in evangelism and outreach with VBS and day camps.
One location that represents this challenge is the small village of Savunga. It's located on St. Lawrence Island, which is only 40 miles from Siberia in the Bering Sea. On a clear day, you can even see Russia in the distance across the water. For much of the year, this small village is only accessible by plane or dog sled. The Siberian Yupik people of St. Lawrence Island have survived these harsh conditions with subsistence living. This means finding natural resources to supply most basic necessities, which includes hunting for food.
This is the most hunting community out of the whole entire state of Alaska is Savunga. We're the walrus capital of the world. We hunt bowhead whales, which is almost the biggest mammal. I love Savunga because, you know, this is home.
In the 1980s, the Adventist Church in Savunga grew from 4 to 25 members because of the ministry of Pastor Ken Crawford. 40 years later, a member he baptized is still a leader of the church.
My wife was interested in Seventh Day. She do lots of Bible study with Ken Crawford. I joined her, you know. Then we baptized in 82 in the Seventh-day Adventist. I like it, you know.
A missionary named Eloise was sent by Arctic Mission Adventure to support Eugene and the Savunga Adventist Church. Eloise's dedicated mission work led to a special day last summer
we were able to see one of the largest baptisms in our conference out here in this just little village of Sabunga out in the Bering Sea, to be able to shed a light on what God is doing here in remote Alaska.
We had a few young kids baptism here. 4 of my grandkids baptized here.
One of those grandkids was Faith.
My grandfather wanted me to be baptized since I was a preteen, and I wanted to change, so I got baptized. I'm very thankful to be here because it keeps me on the right track.
Stories like this are why Arctic Mission Adventure continues to minister in remote areas across St. Lawrence Island and the Alaskan bush.
We just try to help our mission workers who are living in the village be incarnational and to be the hands and the feet of Jesus, to, like it says in Ministry of Healing, Christ's method alone, to show compassion and to mingle and to minister to their needs and then call them to follow Jesus. And so we try to live that out in an incarnational way. When Jesus shows up, lives are transformed.
Please pray for the work of Arctic Mission Adventure. A portion of your offerings will support their projects in the most remote regions of Alaska. Thank you for your support of mission around the globe.
Thanks, Caleb. So going from the remote Alaskan rural areas, we're going to talk about cities for a moment. And if we can have the next PowerPoint up. As I mentioned, Ellen White talked a lot about centers of influence, and she said that Jesus was a center of influence. She said that Satan was a center of influence, but she also talked about urban centers of influence, which are ministry centers that are meeting the needs of people in the community in very practical ways, and they're a platform to put Christ's method of ministry into practice. Let me give you an example from Chicago. Some years ago, Andres Flores planted a church in downtown Chicago, the Epic Church. But then they decided they wanted to plant another church, and what they did is they rented a storefront within a mall in the Yorktown Mall just out near Chicago O'Hare Airport. And in that mall, they had what they called, an art center, where kids and families could come, they could paint, they could sculpture, they could do things with dough, they could do whatever they want, but a place where they could express themselves artistically. And people would come in from all over the community, people shopping, and they could connect with people that they would never connect with in any other way. And directly behind that art space was their worship space. So you drive up, you go to the mall, you go to the storefront, which is the art space, and then directly behind it is the church. A unique way to connect with the community. I think of Denmark, and you travel to Copenhagen, one of the most secular cities in the world, and there some lay people established something called Happy Hand. It's a thrift store, a second-hand store. You go inside and they sell clothing and household goods, and the genius of Happy Hand is that the goods are cheap, so they appeal to the poorer people, but there's a strong consciousness of caring for the environment, of course, in Scandinavia, so many rich people come to for the recycled goods. And that space is then used of an evening. They can use it for seminars or concerts or whatever. You walk into Happy Hand and they have a little place where, surprisingly for Denmark, you can write your prayer requests, and they get hundreds of prayer requests. Out the back, they have a prayer room and a counseling room, and every week, one of the local pastors will come in and spend a day just helping in the store so that they can make friends with the community. They've started Happy Hand. This is Barrett in the middle, who started the Happy Hand. They're now extended to 4 other cities in Denmark. They also have a Happy Hand now in Finland, and they also have one in Norway. I think of the Urban Life Center, just half an hour away from where Bettina and I live in Baltimore, just not too far from the harbor there. There they run a juice bar, and they have a variety of different activities for the community. It's a platform to connect, and in that space, in that urban centre space, they have now planted a church that meets every Sabbath. This is the team. I think of Lebanon, Beirut, and some years ago, a young woman, Alexis, a social worker, living here in the United States. She wanted to do something overseas for mission. She went to Beirut, and for the first, not days, not weeks, but months, she just visited from home to home, trying to get a sense of what the needs were. She learned very quickly that there were a lot of Syrian refugees with kids who weren't getting an education, so she started the Adventist Learning Center right there in Beirut. Beautiful kids who have seen things that you and I would never want to see in a lifetime. But for the first time, they were starting to learn about Jesus. And through this center, Alexis and the team were blessing the community. When I was there, the kids had put up some little post-it notes, and I read through some of them. I want to give God my heart and my smile. I thank you, God, I will learn English for you. I will give God my heart and flowers. And this is my favorite. Pray for God and sacrifice a sheep for you. Beautiful kids. In another part of the world where I can't name the country, so we call it a veiled country, some time ago we started establishing centers of influence. 101 centers have been established. These are just not big centers. These are small little storefront health foods stores, etc. From those centers, 43 new churches have been planted and more than 1,300 people have been baptized. You know, the United Nations has been talking about the 15-minute city, where the goal is to have everybody dwelling in a city 15 minutes or less away from essential services. So they'll be 15 minutes away by public transport or by bike or by walking from a school, from a grocery store, from medical services. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we had 15-minute lighthouses in every city around the world where we could connect with the needs of the community? It could be health, it could be mental health, it could be finances, it could be caring for kids, whatever it is. Platforms where we can mingle with the community, show sympathy, minister to needs, win confidence, and bid people to follow Jesus. Well, now it's time for us to have a musical item, and Pamela is going to sing to us. Thank you, Pamela, The Love of God.
Is greater far than thought or pen can ever tell. It goes beyond the highest star and reaches to the lowest hell. The guilty pair bow down with care. God gave His Son to win His errand show. When mortal time shall pass away and earthly thrones and kingdoms fall, when men who hear refuse to pray on rocks and hills and mountains call, God's love so sure shall still endure, El Major last and strong, redeeming grace to Adam raise, the saints and angels song. Oh, love of God, how rich and pure, how measureless and strong, it shall forevermore endure, the saints and angels song. Could with the ink the ocean ocean fill, and where the skies of parchment made, where every stalk on earth and quill, and every man a scribe by trade, to write the love of God above, would drain the ocean dry, nor could the scroll contain the whole, though stretches from sky to sky. Oh, love of God, how rich and pure, how measureless and strong, it shall forevermore endure. The saints and angels song. Oh, love of God, how rich and pure, how measureless and strong, it shall forevermore endure. The saints and angels song. Amen.
Thank you so much, Pamela. That was beautiful. And let's. It's the love of God that motivates our church planters, global mission pioneers, who are sent out 2 by 2 to start new groups of believers among new people groups and in new areas. And global mission pioneers are the unsung heroes of Adventist mission. These are very humble, not college educated, usually young people who put up their hand and say, yes, I will go for Jesus to start a new group of believers. And it's an honor and a privilege, and it's humbling to meet these pioneers. They are creative. They come up with so many different ideas for starting in new, difficult areas. I can remember some years ago, Mike, when I was in Kalimantan on the island of Borneo, and I met a young global mission pioneer who had arrived in his new town to start a new group of believers right in the middle of civil war. The tribes were fighting each other. And he told me, I saw men running up and down the main street holding the decapitated heads of their enemies. I mean, how do you start a church in that sort of a context? But these pioneers work as close as possible to their own culture. So normally they understand the language, they understand the culture, they live among the people at the same socioeconomic level. I mean, if I went as a missionary to India, I'd be wanting a 4-wheel drive perhaps, and maybe my wife would want a Western bathroom or whatever. Global mission pioneers live incarnationally like Jesus. So let's meet a pioneer. Let's travel to the country of Indonesia.
In the western regions of Indonesia, vast expanses of greenery grace the landscape. Many people have moved here from the city to work on the tea and rubber plantations. They came seeking a better life, but they faced new challenges with their living conditions. Global mission pioneers, Iwan and Jamal, saw the pressing needs of this community and took steps to address them.
This is our way of demonstrating care for the locals here. We observed the absence of electricity and basic sanitation facilities. Taking action, we advocated for electricity installation through discussions with government representatives. Praise God, they now have access to power. Moreover, we constructed toilets, addressing the previous lack of such facilities.
Through meeting these needs, the pioneers have built strong friendships with people in the community. Despite their differing beliefs, the locals have warmly embraced the pioneers.
When they come here, they come for fellowship, just to see us and pray for us.
After solving the electricity and sanitation issues, the pioneers focused on providing education for the community children, most of whom didn't attend school.
My desire for our fellow community members here is for them to undergo transformations, lifting them from constant struggles so that they may enhance their understanding, particularly in education and spirituality. It's my hope that at least one or two individuals will emerge as steadfast servants of God from this place.
The pioneers' affection, compassion, and dedication to serving this community have made a positive impact on its children and their parents.
I love when Mr. Jamal and Mr. Awan come to our place. My children eagerly anticipate the moments when they can meet Mr. Jamal and Mr. Awan. Their genuine compassion and warm-hearted nature resonate deeply with my kids.
Kindly pray for us to maintain our passion in serving and for the well-being of the souls we aid. Pray for their challenges, health, education, and financial struggles as we seek ways to address these needs while staying focused on anticipating God's return, a challenge we aim to navigate with grace. Just as Jesus sacrificed himself, we should emulate his service as an example for us. We aim for Jesus' mission to resonate within the hearts of every individual we serve in this place.
Thank you for supporting global mission pioneers such as Iwan and Jamal, who serve Jesus sacrificially in their corners of the world.
Okay, Caleb, could you stand up, please?
Yes.
Are you ready for a quiz?
Tonight, on this stage?
Right now, an Adventist mission quiz.
Gary, quizzes aren't typically my favorite.
Caleb, I've heard a lot about the attitudes of Gen Z, but try to be a little bit more positive and a little bit more engaged. Okay. We have sitting here Dr. Mike Ryan, who was the first Global Mission Director, and over the years I have given him many, many quizzes, and he never complained. Well, occasionally he complained.
In that case, I think Mike Ryan and I may both have some questions for you for this quiz.
That's not how it works. First question, Caleb. When Global Mission started in 1990, how many Seventh-day Adventists were there around the world?
Back then, in 1990, when it started, roughly 6.5 million.
Very good, Caleb.
Thank you.
Excellent, strong start. Second question, how many Adventists are there today?
That's easy. There's around 22 million.
Correct, Caleb. I'm proud of you. Let's keep moving. How often did someone join the church last year?
We had about one new member around every 22 seconds.
Correct. One Adventist every 21.54 seconds.
Sorry about that.
No, excellent, Caleb. Last year, how often was a new church, not a new group or a new company, but an established church started?
We had new congregations start roughly one every 3 hours.
Correct. Every 2.97 hours. Caleb, I'm very impressed. I'm proud to have you on the team. All right. Last question. How many Seventh-day Adventist congregations are there around the world today?
That would be 175,144.
How on earth did you know that?
It's all written in my notes.
Okay. All right, Caleb. Please tell us about our next video.
Sure. Well, we have one more video for you. I think just one more. There may be more. There's one more Mission Spotlight video that I was able to film recently, a couple of years ago, and we've talked about the 3 mission windows, and this one is about the urban window and how we can reach cities. And also, I thought this story would be particularly a good choice to show here, as it showcases university's medical team and how they've found ways to serve their community's medical needs. And this story comes from Colombia, and in Medellin, the Colombia Adventist University. Now, they've created a mobile health clinic that is this bus or this truck that they've renovated to become a mobile medical clinic. And so they found that there were needs in underserved populations right around the university that they could reach out to, and what can we do to serve them? And so they created this ministry. It's called LLUC. In the video, it'll describe what that means. I don't remember. But they go out to serve, and it's not just medical needs. They have a prayer team and a spiritual care team as well. And so they're mixing, like we often talk about with Christ's method of ministry. You mingle, you take care of their needs, you become friends with them, and then you bid them to follow Jesus. And so the university is taking this method to care for their physical needs, to become friends with them, to show them we care, and we can pray with you, and here's where our spiritual help comes from. So it's a neat ministry there in Colombia that you can learn much more about here in this video.
The City of Eternal Spring is the perfect name for Medellin, Colombia. The residents here enjoy pleasant weather all year and are surrounded by mountains, colorful streets, and vibrant culture. Despite the beautiful surroundings, there are many needs here. The Colombia Adventist University, or UNAC, has found a way to minister to some of these needs. They discovered that surrounding communities lacked sufficient health care. With the help of students, the university created a mobile health clinic called the Social Innovation Mobile Laboratory, or LLUC.
This wonderful project began in 2019, and we have been working on it for 4 years, using the Social Innovation Mobile Laboratory that gives us the possibility of reaching communities and offering our services.
Henry is one of the many students helping with LLUC. He is studying to be a paramedic and has taken a leadership role at the university.
I wanted to become a paramedic because I wanted to serve God and the ones around me with the knowledge I can get from the university to benefit their health. Here we provide the people principles about healthy lifestyle so they can really understand and learn how to take care of their own health through the simple things that God has led us and allowed us to have here on earth.
The LLUC Health Project offers resources such as basic health checks, massages, and even a checkpoint for spiritual health and prayer. The volunteers are passionate about this project because they know they're following Christ's method of ministry.
I think that if Jesus was living today, he would be with us in this project because its purpose is to take others to better ways of living and a better life. And I think that's what Jesus wants for all of us. That's why he left his word. That's why he's always taking care, not just our spiritual self, but also our physical.
This method of ministry to serve the physical and spiritual needs of the community is a key part of the Colombia Adventist University's education.
Jesus' life was centered on service, and that service is what we want to show today. It is one of our legacies as a university, as a mission, as a vision that all our graduates do whatever they do with love, with dedication, and with humanity, and that they can serve others from different areas.
This education through service has made a big impact on Henry and the many other students who have seen the value of service.
I think it has inspired me by showing me how important my work can be to impact, to transform other lives so they can become free from sickness, illness, and that way they are going to be able to connect with their Savior.
Please pray for the LLUC Mobile Clinic project in Medellin as they continue to use Christ's method of ministry to serve their community.
Okay, so it's time now for me to give you a quiz, and we have some prizes to give. We have an Adventist Global Mission calendar. We also have some, I'm guessing, 10-year-old maybe worth 10 cents each. Maybe they still write pens to give you, so that's an incentive. And so the first question is, last year, the Seventh-day Adventist Church commemorated the 150th anniversary of what significant mission event? I need to hear. Yes, please. Please take a pen and a global mission calendar down to that gentleman. Yes, it was the commemoration of the 150th anniversary since J.N. Andrews went to Switzerland. Very good. Second question. What is the main task and responsibility of global mission? What is the main task and responsibility of global mission? to serve people. Something specific. What do the pioneers do? Plant churches. Who said that? Give Dr. Mike Ryan a genuine global mission pen and a calendar. Thank you very much. All right. How is global mission funded? Sabbath offering? Okay. I've got one here which is correct. Donations. Please give this gentleman a pen. And yeah, the last calendar we have. Yes, thank you. So one is donations. How else are we funded? Yeah, prayers. Okay, let me tell you. One is the annual sacrifice offering, which is collected once a year. Every cent of that goes to Global Mission. And third, the sale of Loma Foods 30-something years ago was put into an endowment, and the interest of that endowment helps fund the operations of Global Mission. So thank you, Loma Foods. All right. But I can't give out any pen because nobody told me that. All right. What is the blueprint for Global Mission? What is our marching orders? What is our philosophy of mission? Let me give you a hint. Christ's method alone. Yeah, I'm going to give you that. I'm going to give you a pen for that because that's the first start. Yes, our blueprint, the way we operate is mingle with people. This is how the Global Mission pioneers do it. This is how the centers of influence do it. Mingle with people, show sympathy, minister to needs, win confidence, bid people to follow Jesus. It's a holistic mission. You know, in the Adventist church today, I think we tend to have two mission extremes. One is, let's just be good people, just be nice people, and somehow through the ether they will become Christians. The other extreme is just preach the word, just preach the Bible. But we have been given a holistic mission, which is a mission to all parts of a person. We don't care just about some sort of soul floating around. We care about people and their needs, and that includes their spiritual needs. All right, we have a few minutes left. If anyone has any comments or any questions, if they're easy questions, Caleb will answer them. If there are any difficult ones, if they're difficult questions, Caleb will answer them. If they're easy, direct them to me. Hal.
If I take the tithe and offering envelope from the pew here and want a donation to go for Adventist mission, what do I write on this envelope to get the money to your office?
Well, I'm sure Randy's got at the top there Global Mission, right? So you just tick that box. You would just put Global Mission General Conference, or you can do it online. You can go to adventistmission.org and give directly there. Thank you, Hal. Good question. I'll pay you later. Okay. Any other questions or observations? Yes, sir.
Has a study ever been made on those
centers of outreach, what is the baptismal rate? I know in a lot of countries you don't get any baptism. It's just to people to get to know us and to get to know about us and to get our name up front. But have any studies been done as to, I don't want to use the word efficiency,
Right.
but as to, you know, whether it's a successful method? I know we're not looking to baptize everybody, but do we have any studies, any follow-up studies on that?
Not yet. So at the moment, we just have anecdotal, plus every urban center of influence that we help fund, we expect that we get reports every year before funding for the next year, and we will fund for 3 years. So, yeah, there's been many centers of influence which have closed down for various reasons, but, you know, I gave an example there of the Veiled Country where we've had tremendous success. But no, we haven't done any systematic, because it's really hard to do metrics on what is success with mission, you know. No, because our mission is no strings attached. So we love people because we love people. We care for their needs because we care for their needs. So we mingle, we show sympathy, we minister to needs, we win confidence, and we will still minister to needs even if they never accept Jesus as their Savior. It's not a conditional mission. Dr. Ryan.
You know, I think there might be just a little more than anecdotal evidence.
I apologize.
To that question, just a little more. And that is, number one, the centers of influence are mentioned about 80 times by Ellen White. And she instructs the church to establish them. Number two, it is Christ's method that is being implemented. And then I suppose you cannot pass by this subject without making the observation that we have places in the world that for more than 160 years, we had not one Seventh-day Adventist. And you go there where there has now been established a center of influence, and the part that Gary didn't say is in the back room, there are 30, 50, 70. The school in Syria, I probably shouldn't say that, but in Lebanon, we have a congregation that meets there. And so I think the evidence is it works because it's Christ's method, and we have instruction to do it. So I agree with you. I don't know that we've done a research study on it, but I do know that we have those facts.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Well said. Okay, I don't see any other question. Oh, yes, I do. Down here, one more.
Does global missions pay their missionaries enough to just barely sustain themselves, or do they enough so they can, are they on hardships because the money that we don't send them isn't enough for them to sustain themselves?
So we don't fund the missionaries that go overseas like our.
No, I'm talking about I'm talking about global missionaries.
Yeah, the pioneers. They receive a small living stipend.
They do. It is a living stipend, though.
Yeah, so it's just enough to put a roof over their head, food on the table, and a few basic materials. But they're never going to get rich.
Oh, I know that, but
yeah.
I just want to. It's enough.
Thank you. Another question down the back.
Do you ever collaborate with other mission groups such as Quiet Hour Ministries or compare notes with them or anything like that?
Yes, we do. Yeah. In fact, we've worked very closely with Maranatha Volunteers International, with Gospel Outreach. In fact, Gospel Outreach basically has the same methodology as we do in terms of supporting indigenous workers to plant churches. Over here, I don't want to stretch our friendship, but we do have 2 or 3 more minutes. So yes, over here.
Just a quick question. If I wanted to start a center of influence, like what's the first steps to doing that?
what we suggest is, first of all, you get to understand the community where you want to start the center of influence. What are the needs of that community? And then, do we have any capacity to meet those needs? It's no use finding out that the number one challenge in the neighborhood is people have diabetes, but you've got no medical personnel in your church. So you connect the capacity, the gifts that you have in your church or among your fellowship group with those needs. And then you pray about it, you brainstorm about it, and you talk to your local conference and say, this is our vision, whatever. And they can always apply through the union and division to the general conference for funding, because every center of influence that we support has some funding from the general conference, some from the North American division, some from the union, and some from the local conference. So it's not a GC project. We're in it together, and that's the way that our global mission projects work as well, church planting projects. Okay, one more question down here. Oh, that one, Jeannie, over here. Yeah. Oh, sorry, up there. Sorry, I can't see.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are we up? Yeah, my question is I know it's always nice to get money donated, but sort of dovetailed on this gentleman's question about starting a center of influence. Do you folks have any mechanism? Like, I have seen situations where there's maybe a cafe or something that's shut down that has purchased a lot of inventory, and they're just going to get rid of it where it could be used somewhere else. Is there any vehicle you have to notify someone that, hey, there's some equipment here that could basically set up a center?
We don't have any formal system in place to deal with that, but if we hear of something like that, then we share it with those, if we know it, but we don't have any systematic process in place where we're dealing with that on a day-to-day basis. And, this is all happening at the local level. It's not happening at our level. So we leave that sort of, what the center's going to look like, what sort of equipment it has, that's all made at the local level decision, because we don't know. We're sitting in our offices a million miles away. So we trust same with the Global Mission Pioneer projects. We don't tell local areas where you should plant a church or how you should do it. It always comes from the ground up to us, and we leave it to the local fields to deal with that sort of thing. Jeannie.
In case you wonder how to donate to Global Mission, I'll just give you a hint. You can very easily call Gary's sweet assistant there at the GC and give her your credit card information, and she will very kindly charge it every month.
Thank you, Jeannie. Appreciate that. Okay. Yes, one over here. I'll bring my microphone to you since I'm closest.
What can you tell us about the project for Tent Makers Ministry?
Thank you. Tent Makers is where somebody has their own training and their own expertise, where they can look for and find a job in a challenging mission area. So it may be a teacher, it may be an engineer, it may be a medical doctor, and totally unconnected with the church. We have absolutely nothing to do with it. They independently find a job, they move to that area, but they have a larger purpose, and that is not just to be the teacher or the engineer or the doctor, but they want to be a witness for Jesus. And so what we provide is helping with training and ongoing contact and support while they're there, but we don't find the jobs, we don't pay for them to go there. They're independently doing that.
Do you have any clearinghouse for that? For example, I've got a need right now in South America for a teaching couple in a local school, and I don't know where to go.
There is a website called Vivid Faith. Vivid Faith, V-I-V-I-D, Vivid Faith, Vivid Faith. And this is a wonderful place where you can go to and you can you can sign up and you can list the opportunity, the mission opportunity. And there are thousands of people who have signed up saying, I want to serve somewhere, and it's a place where you can connect the needs and the opportunities with people who are available. Yes?
Helsinki, Finland.
Yes.
The Ecos House, is that funded by the GC?
Yes, we help support that. Yeah, we did. Oh, yes. And anything that's happening in Western Europe, we thank God for, right? Friends, thank you. I don't want to, we will still be here if anybody wants to come and talk or ask any questions. I want to respect the fact that we're supposed to finish at 5:30. Pastor Randy, thank you for allowing us to be in your church and hosting that. We really appreciate it. Hal, thank you for inviting us to come, and we're privileged to be here. I, in my carry-on bag, brought a number of these Mission 360 magazines. This is one commemorating 150 years of Adventist mission. And then we have another one here on, or is it buried in here, on missionary focus. So please, help yourself to these magazines because I don't want to carry them back to Merriman. So thank you everyone for coming, and thank you for your interest in mission. Thank you for your prayers for mission, your support for mission, and I hope that you've been challenged and inspired by what you've seen and heard this evening. And in place of a closing prayer, we're just going to have a short video that will play, and it will be instead of a formal prayer, but it will be an opportunity for each of us to make a fresh recommitment to our involvement in God's mission. Let's hear that. Let's hear that video now. Thank you.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears believe. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed.